Okay, thank you all for coming. There are some people here who surprised me. Oh, gosh. So, this session originally was going to be two of my favorite writers and good friends, Lisa Couturier and Toni Jensen. And Lisa, at the last minute, was not able to come, so I rashly inserted myself in here. So I'm going to read the bios. I'm going to tell you about myself and tell you about Toni. I'm Diane Huter Warner, and I work here in the Southwest Collection Special Collections Library, and I organized this event. This is the sixth one. So as people know, when they talk to me in these 2-3 days, I'm like staring off into space, trying to figure out what's going to happen next and who's supposed to be where when. And unfortunately, I'm supposed to be here. So I got my PhD here in creative writing at Texas Tech University with Dr. Jill Patterson, who's in the room today, and Dr. John Poach, who's sitting back there, and Dr. Bill Winthy, who I guess didn't come. So my first book here was basically my dissertation. It's after the tornado, and benefited from all of their kind attention, and I do thank them for that. So, and Toni Jensen also received her PhD here at Texas Tech University in in fiction. But she's multi-talented and does all of these things. So I have a formal thing I can read about Toni. Her fiction collection From the Hilltop has received starred reviews from Publishers Weekly and Booklist. Her stories have been published in journals such as Ecotone, Denver Quarterly, and Fiction International, and have been anthologized in New Stories from the South, Best of the Southwest, and Best of the West, Stories from the Wide Side of the Missouri. She's working on a collection in progress called Cowboyistan about fracking and the sex trafficking of indigenous women. She teaches in the programs in creative writing and translation at the University of Arkansas. She is Métis First Nations and a good friend. So, I'm only going to read one thing from this book. And I wrote it. A lot of this book is based on personal history and memory, and this one is sort of, but it's also, when you spend a lot of time writing about personal history and memory, you want to get off into things that aren't true, aren't factual, that just some kind of relief. I can see Mr. Lopez looking at me. You want to delve out into something that's fictional and just, well, sometimes you can't help yourself. Sometimes you just go that direction. And this one's called Self-Portrait Number 7. And when I read it last, I explained to the group that there's no chronology to these self-portraits. This is just called Number 7, and it's completely arbitrary. There's no 1 to 6. And it was sort of written in a response to people denigrating women who write what's called confessional poetry, that maybe you shouldn't be writing about yourself so much. You shouldn't be looking at yourself so much. But then I think about when you go to the great museums and you see the portraits of Rembrandt and Van Gogh and Rothko, all these people, they've painted like Rembrandt maybe 30-some different self-portraits. And they don't seem to get criticized for doing that, looking in the mirror and painting themselves. So I wrote Self-Portrait Number 7, and they are kind of, these two poems describe paintings. That's what they're supposed to do. Self-Portrait Number 7. I only wanted to paint myself riding my first bike. Its bright blue frame, silver handlebars, sturdy black tires. For this occasion, I've taped crepe paper streamers to the handle grips, twined them in the spokes. No better way to celebrate than gliding down a long hill with your arms thrown wide to the heavens. But I've trapped myself completely with this portrait, in which I'm speeding like a crazy child, curled over silver handlebars like a petal, furiously blooming. Black asphalt flies behind me like a cape, and even the leaves of the maple trees, turning yellow and red around the spokes of trunks, radiate the frenetic energy of a hallucination. That speck in the background, that blot like a tiny fly stuck in oil, is the devil. Like a wicked stepfather, he pretended to steady the bike. You might not even notice him, but he hunches over, grabbing his knees, sucking in the dust of my wheels with great gulps of his reddened and sweaty cheeks. And because you can't see his eyes, only the top of his balding head, I paint crows on every bare branch. They watch with great intent, great interest, the pebbles that fly up from my tires. I paint these pebbles with ivory and white. Some look like apple blossoms, some look like skulls. Some look so much like baby teeth they should be pillowed in the clouds. And this one is self-portrait number 8, and this one's very much a work in progress. So this is only the second time I've read it. It's different. Okay, self-portrait number 8. I wish to hold peace in the water of my bones, peace like a soft bed of sand streaked by a freshwater stream heading for the strait. I mark the way the sand shifts, uncovering clamshells, crab bodies, agates, gently shouldering them up along the stream bed. 2 deer dance down the clay spits that stretch into the tides, a golden mother and fawn. They dance and lick salt from the rounded, kelp-covered boulders as the waves of the tide beat up around them, too distant for me to hear. I think to be loved by sea hair, waving with the wash of the rising tide, here in the back and forth, at the lip of fresh and saline, I am at last awake. But I paint myself asleep on the mainland, in a garden, in the growing zone, the place of roots and moles. I am sleeping, and you can't help yourself in this dusty corner of the unfamous museum. I know you need to touch my eyelids painted with gray, my lips pink and white and silver. You test with your finger the depth of my slumber. You hold your palm against the canvas. Sure, you will feel the rise and fall of my breast like a tide beneath layers of oil and varnish. The docent, chatting by the door to this gallery, will not notice that you disobey the common courtesies of culture. Sadly, I'm not truly here. I had memories I couldn't face and sorrows that swallowed me night after night like a snake with its disarticulated jaw. I painted until I vanished. I buried myself in clay and leaf mold. I put dots of gold at my ears, specks of white as my lips parted to show my teeth. My fingers and cheeks crept from the canvas like the fingers and cheeks of a doll in a muddy pond. How could I paint myself asleep? How could I see what I was when I was not seeing? You envy the grass roots on my hips like a tidy blanket, a potato overlooked at harvest, sliced by the spade, a sliver of white like a pillow, umber carrots like a picket fence behind my shoulder, the milky center of rhubarb like some faint halo. You want to hear the music rising behind my shuttered eyes, music like a pupa writhing to the top of the soil's brown table. I would warn you that you will be daggered with the pain of such fierce longing, such desire, listening for our hallelujahs, our harmonies, certain we will bring you joy. Then I am at peace. Sorry. Okay. I've got some, I'm not a dog person. I've never owned a dog, but I started writing dog poems. So I have a couple here. They're all pretty, I mean, these are new things, so they're not, I would say they're not finished, and then I have to read them and see what happens when I read them, so I learn by reading. This is the oldest one, it's the one I like the best. It's called The Dogs I Hear Barking in the Middle of the Night. And if you live in Lubbock, you hear dogs barking all the time. So, they sound far away down the street, as far away as a train whistle, as far away as an owl. Not in the yard next door or across the alley, far away, softly barking, not excited, but gruffly like old dogs, black or yellow labs, deep-throated, cultured, and wise. It could be a lullaby they bark out. It could be a fable, a bedtime story told with care in slow syllables. I'll tell it to myself when I can't sleep, and then bid good night, Major, good night, Gus, sweet dreams. You will be gumming a bone, sniffing the grass in the corner where it grows tall and untidy, stiff-legged, pawing at the dirt. You might dig a little at the hole by the fence post, thinking to escape, wriggling your heavy, stout bodies through, sometime when your people are not paying attention. Then go trotting down the alley, tongues lolling out of your mouths, pink and black mottled in the moonlight, a little drool falling like stars into the weeds. Okay. These are actually my neighbor's dogs that I observe. This one's called Watchdog. Can I keep Squirrel balanced on the ridge of the chicken coop? Can I keep Tabby curled tight and purring in the kitchen corner? Can I keep Paperboy from stealing daffodils from your mother's yard? No, too much to do, so much to do. Should I bring the squirrel a tiny parasol, the cat a bowl of mice covered in cream? I checked the mousetraps you set last night, 2 for 2, one in the pantry and one on the floor by the reading table. That will teach them to eat your baking chocolate and drop turds on every canister and box. Neighbor man agrees, smoking and cursing as he opens the door to let someone out to shit on your lawn. He curses the sounds of the day, the sun rising like a kettle, a dog lapping at puddles in the alley. He does not love this dog because it is not his own. When the wind pishes through the bedroom window, intrudes and shoves and hollers its way through the window, brimstone rolls over his pillows. And this one's called The Finch's Beat at the Sunken Window. And we do call our neighbor Smoking Cursing Man, because that's what he does. And he has dogs. Okay, The Finch's Beat at the Sunken Windows. Smoking Cursing Man comes out his front door, whistles his dog home. Not the lonely dog in his basement, not the cold dog whimpering us all awake at daybreak when finches begin the long, simple hours of pulling their food from sunflowers, dropping seed husks onto dusty weeds, each cocking one black eye at that man. The man with the crown of smoke, he whistles the favored one home, the one who roamed the streets, freely defiling the neighbors' lawns, nosing their bushes and doors. This one comes when whistled up. This one comes when called. This one sleeps at the foot of the bed. But that one wags its tail like a fancy ribbon, bends low and seeks to be lower, scrunches its eyes to see no evil, drools hungry as a suckling, keeping its secrets below the short hair of its skull. Oh, the finch's sturdy beaks, oh, the tapping on the full plate of the sun, rapping on the basement's sunken window. These finches are beating the glass, so hard, so sure, they set fire to the stars. I had one more a minute ago. There it is. Okay, this is the last one I'm going to read. That when I was at the conference in Italy last year, Barbara gave me some insight into this, and I tried to do some things, but it's not completely different yet. So it's called Summer Music. Cicadas sing, thrum and wheeze from the mulberry trees, a row of knotted trunks hugging the fence between pole beans and lawn, the highest, greenest leaves dusty from weeks of our passing back and forth on the gravel drive. I stand on our unpainted, rotting front porch. I'm holding the baby's cup in her dress, clean and crisp as Chinese poppies, flaming in summer portrait. Cicadas begin their song again, singing again, as if they had stopped when the screen door slammed, stopped and breathed in, their eyes like orange beads and their wings like chaff. They sing even within the walls of my human chest. They sing in the rooms of my eyes and lungs, in the struggling chambers of my heart, and the trembling of the blood in my wrists. When I stand in the sweet, humid air, holding a cup of water and a red dress, I foresee their bodies' husks, emptied, clinging to the trees like lace shells. I wonder, then, what it will be for my fragile daughter and me to shrug our dresses, our skin, like linen from our shoulders, confused or blessed by music of our own. Thank you. And now, Toni.
Everyone is always taller than I am. All right, except Jill. Jill, you could read before me. It's nice to be back here at Texas Tech. I enjoy coming to this conference every year. Thanks to Diane for continuing to put the conference on. Yeah, I did get my PhD here, and I do teach in the MFA programs in fiction, poetry, and translation. I don't teach in all three, but those are our programs at University of Arkansas. But I always forget to add in my bio that I teach now, too, in the low residency program at Institute of American Indian Art. So there are lots of students here is why I mentioned that. So if you're a student interested in a traditional full residency, fully funded 4-year MFA program, you could talk to me about Arkansas. And if you're interested in a less traditional but equally wonderful low residency MFA program, we're one of the few low-res programs that has funding. Come see me about IA. Okay, so thus ends my plug. All right, I'm going to read a piece that, a nonfiction piece that I wrote, I guess in the fall, yeah, and then it was published in January in Catapult, so it's still up on their site. It is called Women in the Fracklands on Water, Land, Bodies in Standing Rock. And I think it's in 6 parts. 1. On Magpie Road, the colors are in riot. Sharp blue sky over green and yellow tall grass that rises and falls like water in the North Dakota wind. Magpie Road holds no magpies, only robins and crows. A group of magpies is called a tiding, a gulp, a murder, a charm. When the men in the pickup make their first pass there on the road, you are photographing the grass against sky, an ordinary bird blurring over a lone rock formation. You do not photograph the men, but if you had, you might have titled it, Father and Son Go Hunting. They wear camouflage, and their mouths move in animation or argument. They have their windows down, as you have left those in your own car down the road. It is warm for fall. It is grouse seasoned and maybe partridge, but not yet waterfowl. Despite how partridge are in the lexicon vis-a-vis pear trees and holiday singing, the birds actually make their homes on the ground. You know which birds are in season because you are from a rural place like this one, a place where guns and men and shooting seasons are part of the knowledge considered common. Magpie Road lies in the middle of the 1,028,000 51 acres that make up the Little Missouri National Grasslands in western North Dakota. Magpie Road lies about 200 miles north and west of the Standing Rock Reservation, where thousands of indigenous people and their allies have come together to protect the water, where sheriff's men and pipeline men and National Guardsmen have been donning their riot gear, where those men still wait, where they still hold tight to their riot gear. If a man wears his riot gear during prayer, will the sacred forsake him? If a man wears his riot gear to the holiday meal, how will he eat? If a man enters the bedroom in his riot gear, how will he make love to his wife? If a man wears his riot gear to tuck in his children, what will they dream? Magpie Road is part of the Bakken, a shale formation lying deep under the birds, the men in the truck, you, this road. The shale has been forming over centuries through pressure, through layers of sediment becoming silt. The silt becomes clay, which becomes shale. All of this is because of water. The Bakken is known as a marine shale, meaning once here, instead of endless grass, there lay endless water. There, just off Magpie Road, robins sit on branches or peck the ground. A group of robins is called a riot. This seems wrong at every level except the taxonomic. Robins are ordinary, everyday, general public sorts of birds. They seem the least likely of all birds to riot. When the men in the truck make their second pass there on the road, the partridge sit their nests, and the robins are not in formation. They are singular. No one riots but the colors. The truck revs and slows beside you. You have taken your last photograph of the grass, have moved yourself back to the car. The truck pulls itself close to your car, revving parallel. You are keeping your face still, starting the car. You've mislabeled your imaginary photograph. These men, they are not father and son. At close range, you can see there is not enough distance in age. One does sport camouflage, but the other a button-down shirt complete with pipeline logo over the breast pocket. They are not bird hunters. The one in the button-down motions to you out the window with his handgun, and he smiles and says things that are incongruous with his smiling face. 2. The night before, in a nearby Fracklands town, you stand with your camera in your hotel room doorway. You left Standing Rock for the Bakken, and the wood smoke from the water protector camps still clings to your hair. You perform your Fracklands travel protocol, photographing the room, the bedspread and desk, the bathroom. In your year and a half of research for your novel, of driving and talking to women in the Fracklands, you performed this ritual, this protocol, dozens of times. You upload the photos onto a website that helps find women who are trafficked, who have gone missing. The influx of men, of workers' bodies into Frackland towns brings an overflow of crime. In the Bakken, at the height of the oil and gas boom, violent crime, for example, increased by 125%. North Dakota Attorney General Wayne Steinehem called this increase in violent crime disturbing and cited aggravated assaults, rapes, and human trafficking as, quote, chief concerns. In each place, each frackland, off each road, you wait until checkout to upload the photos of the rooms. In the year and a half of driving and talking and driving and talking, if you've learned nothing else, you've learned to wait, because it is very, very difficult to sleep in a hotel room once you learn a woman's gone missing from it. 3. In the Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania, a floor hand shuts the door to his hotel room, puts his body between the door and a woman holding fresh towels. A floor hand is responsible for the overall maintenance of a rig. The woman says to you that he says to her, "I just want some company." He says it over and over into her ear, her hair, while he holds her down. She says it to you, your ear, your hair. She hates that word now, she says, company. A floor hand is responsible for the overall maintenance of a rig. A floor hand is responsible. But who is responsible for and to this woman, her safety, her body, her memory? Who is responsible to and for the language, the words that will not take their leave? In a hotel in Texas in the Wolfcamp Shale, you wake to the music of the trucks arriving and departing. This hotel is shiny tile and chrome bathrooms. It's a parking lot overfilled with trucks, with men from the fields who have an arrangement with management. An arrangement can mean flowers in a vase. An arrangement can mean these men pay for nothing, not even a room. In the morning, the parking lot is all trash can, beer bottles and used condoms and needles, the nighttime overflow. In a hotel in Texas in the Permian Basin, you report to the front desk, R.E. the roughneck in the room above. You dial 0 while he hits his wife, girlfriend, girl he has just bought. You dial 0 while he throws her and picks her up and starts again. Or at least one floor down, this is the soundtrack. Upon his departure, the man uses his fist on every door down your hall. The sound is loud, but also is like knocking, like hello, like anybody home. You wonder if he went first to the floor above, but think not. Sound, like so many things, operates mostly through a downward trajectory. At a hotel where South Dakota and Wyoming meet, you are sure you've driven out of the Bakken, past its edge, far enough. That highway, that night, belongs to the deer, and all 40 or 50 of them stay roadside as you pass. You arrive at the hotel on caffeine and luck. The parking lot reveals the calculus of your mistake. Truck after truck after truck, and a hotel clerk outside transacting with a young roughneck. Their posture suggests a shared cigarette or kiss or grope, something safetied through vice or romance or lust. You'd take it. But here the posture is all commerce, is about the positioning of the body close so money can change hands. You are in a place that's all commerce, where bodies are commerce only. When two more roughnecks stagger into your sightline, the hotel clerk and her partner are heading inside. She meets your eyes like a dare. The staggering man is drunk, the other holding up the first while he zips his fly. This terminology, fly, comes from England, where it first referred to the flap on a tent, as in, tie down your tent fly against the high winds, as in, don't step on the partridge nest as you tie down your fly, as in, stake down your tent fly against the winter snow, against the rubber bullets, against the sight of the riot gear. The men sway across the lot, drunk loud, and one says to the other, "Hey, look at that," and you are the only that there. When the other replies, "No, I like the one in my room just fine," you are sorry and grateful for the one in an unequal measure. You cannot risk more roadside deer, and so, despite all your wishes, you stay the night. A group of deer is called a herd, a group of roe deer a bevy. There is a bevy of roe deer in the red forest near Chernobyl. The Bakken is not Chernobyl, because this is America. The Bakken is not Chernobyl, because the Bakken is not the site of an accident. The Bakken is not Chernobyl, because the Bakken is no accident. 4. On Magpie Road, the ditch is shallow but full of tall grass. With one hand, the button-down man steers his truck closer to your car, and with the other he waves the handgun. He continues talking, talking, talking. The waving gesture is casual, like the fist knocking down the hotel hallway. Hello, anyone home, hello. Once on a gravel road, your father taught you to drive your way out of a worse ditch. When the truck reverses, then swerves forward, as if to block you in, you take the ditch to the right, And when the truck slams to a stop and begins to reverse at a slant, taking the whole road, you cross the road to the far ditch, which is shallow, is like a small road made of grass, a road made for you, and you drive like that, on the green and yellow grass, until the truck has made its turn, is behind you. By then, you can see the highway, and the truck is beside you on the dirt road, and the truck turns right, sharp across your path, so you brake, then veer left. You veer out, onto the highway, fast in the opposite direction. Left is the direction to Williston, so you drive to Williston, and no one follows. At a big box store in Williston, a lot sign advertises overnight parking for RVs. You have heard about this, how girls are traded here. You had been heading here to see it, and now you're seeing it. Mostly, you're not seeing. You are in Williston for 38 minutes, and you don't leave your car. You spend those 38 minutes driving around the question of violence, of proximity and approximation. How many close calls constitute a violence? How much brush can a body take before it becomes a violence, before it makes violence, or before it is remade, before it becomes something other than the body it was once, before it becomes a past tense body? 5. Q&A. Why were you there on the road? Because Indigenous women are almost 3 times more likely than other women to be harassed, to be raped, to be sexually assaulted, to be called a that there. Because when the governor of North Dakota made an order to block entrance into the camps at Standing Rock and then rescinded it, he said the order was intended to ward, quote, public safety. Because in his letter to the Standing Rock tribal chairman, the commander of the Army Corps of Engineers said he was, quote, genuinely concerned for the safety and well-being of both the members of your tribe and the general public located at these encampments. Because these statistics about trafficking, about assault, are knowledge considered common, but only if your body is not considered a general public body. Because you're a Métis woman. Because you and they and we misunderstand the danger at Standing Rock, the danger of this pipeline going in there or elsewhere or everywhere. Because you and they and we misunderstand the nature of danger altogether. Because each person in Flint, Michigan, for the foreseeable future, is rationed 4 cases of bottled water per week. Because you can see this future upriver or down. Because everywhere is upriver or down. Because your first memory of water is of your father working to drown your mother. Because you are 4 or 5 and you need to use the bathroom, but instead find yourself backing out the bathroom doorway and down the hall where you sit on the rust-colored shag. Because you wait for your father to quit trying to drown your mother. It seems crucial in the moment not to wet your pants. It seems crucial to hold the pieces of yourself together. If you make a mess on the carpet, if your father doesn't kill your mother, then she will have to clean the carpet. It seems crucial not to cause any trouble, so you sit, you wait, you hold yourself together. Because all roads used to lead back to that house, and it is a measure of time and hard work that they no longer do. Because all roads lead to the body and through it. Because too many of us have these stories and these roads. Because you carry theirs and they carry yours, and in this way there is a measure of balance. Because you are still very good at holding yourself together. Because these times make necessary the causing of trouble, the naming of it. Because to the north and west of Magpie Road in the Cypress Hills of southern Saskatchewan, in 1873, when traders and wolf hunters killed more than 20 Assiniboine, mostly women and men, in their homes, the Métis hid in these hills, those hills, and lived. Because they lived, they carried the news. Because they lived, you carry the news. Because the massacre took place along the banks of a creek that is a tributary that feeds into the greater Missouri River. Because these times and those times and all times are connected through land and bodies and water. What were you wearing there on the road? Not riot gear. Why didn't you call the police? See the water cannon on the bridge at Standing Rock. Listen to the sheriff's department men call it a water hose, like this makes the act better. See also Birmingham, Alabama. See the dog cages constructed outside the Morton County Sheriff's Department to hold, quote, overflow. See the overflow, the water protectors, Dakota and Lakota and Nakota women and men in cages. See it all overflow. See the journalists arrested for trespass and worse. See the confiscated notebooks, the cameras they will never get back. See the woman struck by a tear gas canister. See how she will no longer be able to see through her right eye. See the children whose grandmothers and grandfathers are hospitalized with hypothermia. See the elder who has a heart attack. See how science newly quantifies what some of us have long known, how historical and cultural trauma is lived in our bodies, is passed down generation to generation, how it lives in the body. See the fires that elders light to keep warm. See the water extinguish those fires. See the children seeing it. Why were you by yourself? On a road like this, you're never alone. There's grass, there is sky, there is wind. See also the answer on historical and cultural trauma. See also Cypress Hills. See also the everyday robins who are in formation now. See also their ordinary general public bodies in riot. What did you do after? You drove north and west and sat in rooms with friends old and new. You hiked and ate good meals and talked about art. You wrote things down. You began the work of stitching yourself back together. You did this on repeat until the parts hung together in some approximation of self. In Livingston, Montana, you made use of the car wash. You left the tall grass there. Further questions should be directed toward proceed to the root. Upon arrival, pick up loose roadside threads. Use them to stitch shut the asking mouths. 6. At Standing Rock, the days pass in rhythm. You sort box upon box of donation blankets and clothes. You walk a group of children from one camp to another so they can attend school. The night before the first walk, it has rained hard and the dirt of the road has shifted to mud. The dirt or mud road runs alongside a field which sits alongside the Cannonball River, which sits alongside and empties itself into the Missouri. Over the field, a hawk rides a thermal, practicing efficiency. There on the road, in the mud, 3 Herefords block progress. The cow snorts to her calves, which are large enough to be ambulatory, young enough for the cow still to proffer protection. She places her body between you, the threat, and her calves. She stamps her hooves into the mud, and they stick in a way you imagine unsatisfactory. In that letter to the Standing Rock tribal chairman, the Army Corps commander wrote that the people must disperse from camp, quote, due to the concern for public safety and because, quote, this land is leased to private persons for grazing and or haying purposes. A cow holds public hooves, whether stuck in mud or otherwise. A cow is not a concern to public safety. But what of these children? Are they considered public or private? If they don't graze or hay, if they cannot be leased, what is their value here on this road, in this our America? That day, there on the road, once the mother cow allows safe passage, you walk on. After school, but before the return walk, the children and you gather with hundreds to listen to the tribal chairman speak of peace. to sit with elders, to pray, to talk of peace. On this day, it is still fall. Winter will arrive with the Army Corps' words, no drilling under Lake Oahe, no pipeline under Lake Oahe. The oil company will counter, calling the pipeline vital, saying they fully expect to complete construction of the pipeline without any additional rerouting in and around Lake Oahe. The weather will counter with a blizzard. After the words and before the blizzard, there will be a celebration. A gathering of larks is called an exaltation. Even if it wasn't so, you like to think of them there, like to think of their song, there with the people in the snow, there alongside the river. Back in the fall, you walk the children home from school, there on the road. You cross the highway, the bridge, upon your return. This bridge lies due south of the backwater bridge of the water cannons or hoses. But this bridge this day holds a better view. The canoes have arrived from the Northwest tribes, the Salish tribes. They gather below the bridge on the water, and cars slow alongside you to honk and wave. Through their windows, people offer real smiles. That night, under the stars, fire lit, the women from the Salish tribes dance and sing. Though you've been to 100 powwows easily, you've never seen this dance, never heard this song. You stand with your own arms resting on the shoulders of the school children, and the dancers, these women, move their arms in motions that do more than mimic water, that conjure it. Their voices are calm and strong, and they move through the gathering like quiet, like water, like something that will hold, something you can keep, even if only for this moment. Thanks.
Well, this isn't, I guess, so much of a question. So I'm a recovered crack heroin addict, and of course my perspective is different from yours, but even as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old guy trafficking drugs, I hated Odessa. I always used to say Odessa is my least favorite place in the world, and it always seemed inherently violent, and anytime I go there, I get into sketchy situations without going into much detail, but it seemed to me like a bunch of young men with too much money than they know what to do with a lot of toys and new cars, and while the community, the town, it was crumbling down around it. And so it was really interesting these last few days hearing you speak, and I don't know, sort of affirming this, because I get the idea that a lot of people that don't have contact with drug culture are not aware of the sort of violence that it brings. And of course, like I said, my perspective was from a white male, young guy, but it's been really interesting to hear the complications that I think addiction sort of brings into this whole, fracking culture that you talked about. So anyways, I wanted to thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, they're deeply intertwined at the level of culture, and so, I have a daughter, and she's getting a little too old now because she's 10 for the people make bad decisions line. But people make bad decisions when they're high out of their minds, and that is part of the culture. And so I think you can easily trace, a significant portion of the violence that happens against women and against men. Men are also, especially young men. Some of the companies now are starting to have, not all, but a few, at least in the Northwest, I don't know about in Texas, but in Montana and Wyoming, some of the companies in North Dakota are starting to have an orientation when people, brief, but just saying basically when you get paid, don't carry your money around with you. Don't get drunk on these sorts of nights because men are being raped as well. And so their safety is also compromised. But it's the drug culture fueling the violence, or I think also the inverse, people who didn't understand what they were signing on for once they are in this violence, this culture of violence, then turning to drugs. So it's it's a circle. If it were a line, it'd be easier to deal with, right? Yeah, and you should talk to Stephen Jones, who has ideas about Odessa when he gets here too. Lots of ideas and good writing on Odessa, yeah, and Midland. Yeah.
I just want to underscore your use of the word fueling.
Mm.
The cycle,
Yeah.
fueling.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I had a good conversation with my friend Jen Eames when I was in Livingston, Montana. She's from New Orleans and has lived in Montana since Katrina and relocated. And so I think her sort of no-nonsense perspective, she said, okay, so you're doing this work, but you're driving all over. And now you're flying and I said, that's right. And more people, it's only usually women like her who will look me in the eye and sort of call me out on that. But I deal with that in another piece. I think that those of us who do a lot of traveling and speaking or a lot of traveling for our research, I mean, there isn't another way to do this sort of work, but it is a layer. And to ignore that, we're consuming an awful lot while sort of in the name of this, right? And so it's complicated. Yeah, yeah.
But I wasn't,
No, but I am. But I think, but it brings up that. I mean, that word brings that to mind. Yeah.
I was just thinking about
Right.
the irony of the purpose of men being there is to fuel the economy and fuel the carbon
Sure.
economy.
Yeah.
And yet what is fueled is their own destruction
Mhm.
and fueling violence. And it's just an irony.
Yeah. Agreed. Other questions? Yeah.
Throughout the work, you sort of underscore language
Mhm.
and responsibility.
Yeah.
Are there certain ways that you think our language needs to change? Because that's something I kind of expected as I was reading, like eventually that's something you would get to. But
Yeah. I don't think the language is at fault. I think our interaction with the language is what's at fault. And so, yes, I am advocating. I'm also writing, I have a piece that I read from the other night that starts with that, but our separations of language of violence, mass shootings versus domestic, right? So how many people have to get killed in a house before it's a mass shooting? If it's a dad who shoots the whole family and their 8 children, is that a mass shooting? No, right? That's domestic violence. So our language is not serving us. It is helping, the way we're using the language is helping, in my view anyway, to reify these categories and to give a demoting of sorts to certain things, right? Violence against women, interpersonal violence, right? So in the other piece I read, there's a line about what is a domestic violence bullet, right? It's just a bullet. And so this notion that crimes against women, the language demotes them. And so the language itself does that. The word domestic isn't an inherently bad word. It's not the language's fault. It's the way culturally we use that language as a lessening. So yeah, I do have in some of the work a pretty strong move toward advocating that we need to conceptually re-see how we're using some of these terms. Yeah.
There's also manhood without initiation.
Mm-hmm.
That,
Yes.
Initiation is a process of coming into community
Right.
in a community of trust and responsibility, mutual responsibility.
Absolutely.
And what is initiation in this culture? Getting drunk and having unprotected sex in the backseat of a car,
Yeah.
or something, or going out and shooting something that didn't need shooting.
Mm-hmm. And not eating it, right? Yeah. Or using its fur, or,
So
you know,
maybe that's
yeah.
the kind of, I remember a few years back that book by Helen and Norberg Hodge about the changes that she saw in Himalayan cultures
Mhm.
from the infusion of Western media and the definition of what maleness was.
Right.
So these boys would move to the city, get a scooter, wear their shirts unbuttoned, a gold chain, and aviator sunglasses. And that was
Yeah.
masculinity.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. There isn't a way to look at this without looking at that piece. I think that's true. And there's been a lot of good writing lately on those sorts of questions. And I would say, you talk about initiation or ritual into the community, so we have to look there, right? We have to look at our definitions of community and how that's falling apart across the country. And so how do we have a ritual into adulthood in a community when we don't have a community? It's tricky. I'm not saying I have any answers, but I think that that's the heart of the problem, really. Yeah. Or a heart of the problem.
Sorry. I was gonna say, mining boomtowns have always had that problem.
Yes,
Young men away from their mothers and the people they're responsible to,
that's right.
without military discipline.
Yes.
And
And military towns have the problems too, just not as acutely,
Oh, yes, they
because
do.
there's structures in
They would have a
place.
lot more
Yes, they
if
would.
there wasn't a British.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
My question is for Diane, because I've worked in animal studies, and I'm a dog person, I have 3 to 5 dogs at any given moment. I've really enjoyed the way that you created these images of the dogs without personifying them. Can we talk a little bit about that? You know, the dogs, they're going down the back of the alley, the dog's doing this.
Well, maybe because I don't have dogs as pets, I don't think of them as people, as far as, so.
But that's a critical, that's not an easy distance to maintain when you do it.
Thank you, but I guess it's just something you, I mean, as writers, we avoid that whole thing, you know, making them too cute. I mean, there was that one poem where I started talking like I am the dog, and it's like, the dog is saying, what's up, what's up? But, and that's more of a cute poem than the other, so. It could just be, I don't really think of them as warm and fuzzy like my friends do. Think of, Toni loves her dogs, you know, people love their dogs, but I never have them, really.
I think it gives a new perspective, well, not perhaps new, but a very poetic perspective of it. I'd love to hear more dog poems.
All right, so. Any more questions?
Can you say again where that piece was?
Yeah, Catapult is the name of it. My editor was Marie-Helene Bertina. She's tremendous.
Is that online?
It is. Yep. I think you could probably even Google me in Fracklands as one word and it comes up, which is nice.